Hello, girls. I hope you're keeping safe and healthy. So, let's continue with Walt Whitman's poem Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. So, in the last class, we talked about the first and the second section. So, let's begin with the third section and let's see what poet has to say in that. So, in the third section, the poet speaks from knowledge and experience that coming into this world and living in it and being subject to its laws and dynamism is inevitable. So the scenic and phenomenological identity is stressed in section third and fourth, and leads to emotional and moral identity in section fifth and sixth. So the theme of identity between the particular self and other selves via their involvement in this world is steadily carried forward imagistically. So there's a lot of imagery and introspectively, and you will find that through the first six sections, in the seventh section, the poet is saying that he approaches the future voyager closer because he considered him before his incarnation in bodily form. So now first let's read section 3 and then we'll see what is he trying to say in section 3. So I've given you a brief idea of what is he trying to talk about in section 3. He's giving you an imagery, and the description of his journey is being focused more with the images. So it avails not time nor place, distance avails not. I am with you, you men and women of a generation, or even ever so many generation hence. Just as you feel when you look on the river and sky, so I felt. Just as any one of you is one of a living crowd, I was one of a crowd. Just as, so he's probably talking to the people who are yet to come, the generation which is yet to come. Just as you are refreshed by the gladness of the river and the bright flow, I was refreshed. Just as you stand and lean on the rail, yet hurry with the swift current, I stood yet was hurried. Just as you look on the numberless masts of ship and thick-stemmed pipes of steamboats, I looked. I too many and many time crossed the river of old. Oh, he's talking with the generation to come, and he's also talking with the generation who's already gone before him. So he's saying that whatever they did, I'm also doing it now. And now he will say that whatever I'm doing now, you will also do. So he is actually considering this situation as timeless. I mean, this situation is going to be encountered by everybody. They are going to experience this situation. All the people a decade ago who came here on this ship, who traveled from Manhattan to Brooklyn, and the people who are yet to come, the people who are yet to born. I too many and many a time crossed the river of old, watched the 12th-month seagulls, saw them high in the air, floating with motionless wings, oscillating their bodies, saw how the glistening yellow lit up parts of the bodies and left the rest in strong shadow, saw the slow weaving circles and the gradual edging towards south, saw the reflection of the summer sky in the water, had my eyes dazzled by shimmering tracks of beam, looked at the fine centrifugal spokes of light round the shape of my head in the sunlit water, looked on the haze on the hills southward and southwestward, looked on the vapor as it flew in fleeces tinged with violet, looked towards a lower bay to notice the vessel arriving, saw their approach, saw aboard those that were near me, saw the white sails of schooners and sloops, saw the ships at anchor, the sailors at work in the rigging or out astride the spars, the round mast, the swinging motion of the hulls, the slender serpentine pennants, the large and small steamers in motion, the pilots in their pilot houses, the wide wake left by passage, the quick tremulous whirls of wheels, the flag of all nations, the falling of them at sunset, the scallop-edged waves in the twilight, and ladle cups, the frolicsome crest and glistening, the stretch afar growing dimmer and dimmer, the grey walls, glistening, the stretch afar growing dimmer and dimmer, the grey walls of the granite storehouses by the docks, On the river in the shadowy group, the big steam tug closely flanked on each side by the barges. The hay boat, the belated lighter on the neighboring shore, the fires from the foundry chimneys, burning high and glaringly into the night, casting their flicker of black contrasted with wild red and yellow light over the tops of houses and down into the clefts of streets. So you can see there's a literal meaning of the third section. He's just trying to give you the imagery. He's talking about the nature which he experiences during his travel from one place to another. So there is no hidden meaning in it, and as I said earlier, he's trying to give you the picture through his experience of the images which he is seeing. Whitman declares that neither time nor place really matter, for he is a part of this generation and of many generation hence. He speaks to future generation and tells them their experience are not new. I too many and many a time crossed the river of old, watched the 12-month seagulls, saw the reflection of summer sky. So you can see what all examples he has given. So this third section reveals the poet's desire to transcend time, place, and distance in order to establish contact with people of future generations. So his own experience is similar to that of the reader years from now. So the description of the journey on the river is very vivid. The movement of the day from morning until midnight is parallel to the movement of the poet from one side of the river to another, and from the physical to the spiritual. So if you go through the stanza, the this section 3, you will find that he is just giving you the picture of his experience. Like centrifugal spokes means the light, the halo light which falls from the sun on the river. Then the schooners are the sailing ships. Then sloops are the masted ships, and the rigging means the that system of ropes which are carried on by the people on the boats who are technically managing the boats. Spars means pole. Serpentine pennants means the flag, the which are there hailing on the boats. Then hulls means the main body of the ship. So he's basically giving you different synonyms of the ships, different kind of boats and the variety of ships which are sailing over that river, and whatever he's seeing on his way from Manhattan to Brooklyn or the other way around. So you will find that there is simple imagery which is being presented, and when you go through the stanza, there's just a description of his voyage from one place to another. Then in the section 4 he says, these and all else were to me the same as they are to you. I loved well those cities, loved well the stately and the rapid river. The men and women I saw were all near to me. Other the same others who look back on me because I looked forward to them. The time will come, though I stop here today and tonight. So in the fourth section, the poet says that whatever time you are seeing, whatever things you are seeing here today are same to me. I've encountered the same things. So the theme of identity between the particular self and the other self is prevalent. So he declares his deep love for the cities, the river, and the people. And in this section, there is transition and marks the beginning of the change in the poet's attitude towards men and objects. For the first time, he becomes emotionally involved in his relationships with other people and things. The reference to the future is prophetic and anticipates the growth of spiritual kinship between the poet and the reader. Then in the section number 5, he says, what is it then between us? What is the count of the scores or hundreds of years between us? Whatever it is, it avails not. Distance avails not, and place avails not. I too lived. Brooklyn of ample hills was mine. I too walked the streets of Manhattan Island and bathed in the waters around it. I too felt the curious abrupt questionings stir within me. In the day among crowds of people, sometimes they came upon me. In my walks home late at night or as I lay in my bed, they came upon me. I too had been struck from the float forever held in solution. I too had received identity by my body. Then I knew, was of my body, and what I should be, I knew I should be of my body. So you see, there is no rhyme scheme as such, there is no rhythm, but he's just talking about himself. He's just continuously me, 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 as you can see in the stanza in the paragraph, or in this particular section, that he is focusing on himself, what has he seen, and he's trying to relate that with the people who are yet to come to see that. So he poses a question about the relationship between himself and the generations to come. So what is it done between us? How are we connected? Even if there are hundreds of years between them, they are united by things which do not change. He says, even if you're going to come in this world after 100 years, um, from now, there is a connection. There are things which will unite us, and this is the place probably which is a common place where I also came and you will also come. So this is the place where we are united. He too lived in Brooklyn and walked the Manhattan streets. He too felt the curious, abrupt questionings stir within him. He believes that his body, his physical existence, has become a ferry uniting him with all mankind. So you will see that this particular section is the core of the poem. It's the central core of the poem. The poem is seeking his own physical. The poet is seeking his own physical and spiritual identity, endeavors to unite his sensibility with that of his reader. Uh, excuse me. So his search, his quest now becomes more intellectual than before. Wishing to suggest the quality of spiritual unification, Whitman has used the metaphor of uh, which is the float forever held in solution. So this is a kind of chemical formula which is trying to give you is the infinite ocean of spiritual life which contains the potential of all life. So he says that this is the float forever held in solution. So there is spirituality involved in this float. In this float refers to the voyage, of course, the travel which he's doing right now, and he says the spirituality, through spirituality, is united with future generations and with all of mankind. Excuse me. It is not upon you alone the dark patches fall, the dark threw its patches down upon me also. The best I had done seemed to me blank and suspicious. My great thoughts, as I suppose them, were not when were they not in reality meager? Nor is it you alone who know what it is to be evil. I am he who knew what it was to be evil. I too knitted the old knot of contrariety, blabbed, blushed, resented, lied, stole, grudged, had guile, anger, lust, hot wishes. I dared not speak. Was wayward, vain, greedy, shallow, sly, cowardly, malignant, the wolf, the snake, the hawk not wanting in me, the hog not wanting in me, the cheating look, the frivolous word, the adulterous wish, not wanting, refusals, hates, postponement, meanness, laziness, none of these wanting, was one with the rest, the days and haps of the rest, was called by my nighest name by clear, loud voice of young men as they saw me approaching or passing, felt their arms on my neck as I stood, or the negligent leaning of their flesh against me as I sat. Saw many I loved in the street or ferry boat or public assembly, but he never told them a word, lived the same life with the rest, the same old laughing, gnawing, sleeping, played the part that still looks back on the actor or actress, the same old role, the role that is what we make it, as great we like, or as small as we like, or both great and small. So I hope you understand what he's trying to say in this stanza. It's quite an interesting stanza. He approaches the future voyager closer because he considered them before his incarnation in bodily form. He tells us that he has been engulfed by the same dark patches of doubt which have engulfed the reader. His best action have appeared blank and suspicious. He too has known what it was to be evil, and he too blabbed, blushed, resented, lied, stole, grudged, had guile, anger, lust, hot wishes. But life finally is what we make it. The same old role, as great as we like or as small as we like. So life is what we make it, as he says. The old knot of contrariety the poet has experienced refers to Satan and his evil influence on the man. And he says it creates the condition of contraries of moral evil and good in human life. So you're always having that inner conflict of doing moral and also conducting or committing evil at the same time. So that is human life. The poet suffered from these evil influences as well as all men have. So the poet implies not feel alone because you have been this way. One must accept both the pure and the impure elements of life. So he's giving a very fine assessment of human life, and he says that there is nothing to feel complex on or about because all humans are more or less same. So even I've encountered and faced all those things which probably you have faced, and if you feel guilty or if you feel bad about it, then you don't need to, because it happens as humans that we need to face all these problems and the conflicts which uh, happen to take place in every human's life. So in section 7, he says, closer yet I approach you. What thought you have of me now? I had as much of you. I laid in my stores in advance. I considered long and seriously of you before you were born. Who was to know what should come home to me? Who knows what, but I am enjoying this. Who knows for all the distance, but I am as good as looking at you now. For all you cannot see me. So in section 7, the poet is addressing his reader, says, closer yet I approach you. The poet is thinking as much of the reader, yet not in this world. The reader is not one. The people who are yet to come on this ferry. Um, he says while he thinks that while the reader reads the poem, he's thinking of the poet right now. And perhaps now, though he cannot be seen, the poet is watching the reader. The poet is trying to establish a link between himself and his future readers. The link is not only of location, as on the ferry, but of thought process as well. These thought processes will eventually lead to the mystical fusion between the poet and the reader. Because he says that, who knows, but I am enjoying this. Who knows for all the distance, but I'm as good as looking at you now. For all you cannot see me, but I can see you right now because I assume that you will be there, and one day you will read me. Hence, there will be connection between you and me. So, in the next section, he says, what can ever be more stately and admirable to me than mast-hemmed Manhattan, river and sunset and scalloped-edged waves of full flood tide, the seagulls oscillating their bodies, the hay board in the twilight and the belated lighter? What gods can exceed these that clasp me by the hands and with voices I love, call me promptly and loudly by my nice name as I approach? What is more subtle than this which ties me to the woman, a man that looks in my face? What fuses me into you and pours my meaning into you? We understand, then, do we not? What I promised without mentioning it, have you not accepted? What the study could not teach, what the preachings could not accomplish, is accomplished, is it not? So he says that in section 8, he says the climax probably has reached as the poet works his way into the very being of the reader. He says, what is more subtle than this which ties me to the woman or man that looks into my face? Immediately after this direct identification, the poet assumes his task is accomplished. He has succeeded in establishing the fact of total identity in a convincing manner. It was this task he sets out to do, and now he has accomplished it. So he describes the beauty of Manhattan Harbor, the sunset on the river, the seagulls, and the twilight. He realizes that the bonds between himself and other people are subtle but enduring. Between himself and the persons who look in my face is the subtlest bond. He says it is the bond which is going to last forever. The union between himself and others cannot be understood in ordinary terms by teaching or by preachings. It is more mystical and spiritual and intuitive. He says, recalling the scene of the river and the people with whom he was associated, he evokes the spiritual bond that links men with his fellow men. The reference to a fusion is basic ideal that poet sought in the beginning. The union with the reader is mystical and beyond the bounds of rational thought or philosophy. So he says there is something, and the preachings could not accomplish is accomplished now, is it not? And what I tried to connect, what I intended was is achieved. That spiritual bond which he was, because Walt Whitman always focuses on comradeship, brotherhood, and hence he wanted to develop that brotherhood. And he stated that in the very beginning that there is some connection which we have when we travel on this path. In the last section, there is a ninth section. He says, flow on, river, flow with the flood tide and ebb with the ebb tide. Frolic on, crested and scalloped, edged waves. Gorgeous clouds of the sunset, drenched with your splendor, me, or the men and the women generations after me. Cross from shore to shore, countless crowds of passengers. Stand up, tall masts of Manhattan. Stand up, beautiful hills of Brooklyn. Throb, baffled and curious brain, throw out questions and answers. Suspend here and everywhere. Eternal float of solution. Gaze, loving and thirsting eyes in the house or street or public assembly. Sound out, voices of young men, loudly and musically call me by my nice name. Live, old life. Play the part that looks back on the actor or actress. Play the old role, the role that is great or small according as one makes it. Consider you who peruse me, whether I may not in unknown ways be looking upon you. Be firm, rail over the river, that support those who lean idly, yet haste with the hasting current. Fly on, seabirds, fly sideways, or wheel in large circles high in the air. Receive the summer sky, you water, and faithfully hold it. All downcast eyes have time to take it from you. Diverge, find spokes of light from the shape of my head or anyone's head in the sunlit water. Come on, ships from the lower bay, pass up or down, while sail schooners, sloops, lighters, flaunt away flags of all nations, be duly lowered at sunset. Burn high your fires, foundry chimneys, cast black shadows at nightfalls, cast red and yellow light over the tops of the houses. Appearances now or henceforth indicate what you are. You necessary film continue to envelop the soul, about my body for me and your body for you. Be hung out, divinest aromas, thrive, cities, bring your freight, bring your shoes, ample and sufficient rivers, expand, being then which none else is perhaps more spiritual. Keep your places, objects than which none else is more lasting. You have waited, you always wait, you dumb beauties, beautiful ministers, we receive you with free sense at last, and are insatiate henceforward. Not you any more shall be able to foil us or withhold yourselves from us. We used to, and do not cast you aside. We plant you permanently within us. We fathom you not, we love you, there is perfection in you also. You furnish your paths towards eternity. Great or small, you furnish your paths towards the soul. So in this section 9, the poet returns to the scenes and sights which he had been cataloging in the opening sections of the poem, and in he talks about the countless crowd or the passengers to cross the river from shore to shore, calls upon the seabirds to reel and wheel, and the sunset clouds to drench him with their splendor. The imagery of light, color, movement, sound, sight fuse into a uh, huge beat, evoking the material and the immaterial. Phenomenal and nominal, objective and subjective are reconciled by poet whose loving and thirsting senses are turned over to the sense stimuli, whose baffled and curious brain restlessly sent questions and answers, and whose um, understanding and vision can mediate between appearance and reality. So the section closes on a philosophical note of surpassing intensity. So he invokes the river to flow with the flood tide, the clouds to shower upon him and other passengers, and the tall mast of Manhattan to stand up. He calls on everything, the bird, the sky, and the water, to keep on fulfilling their function with splendor. For everything is part of the universal life flow. The poet desires that the eternal float of solution should suspend itself everywhere. Physical objects like dumb, beautiful ministers wait for their union with the poet's soul. Thus, the end of the poem, Whitman addresses himself to material objects which are also part of life process because they are useful to men. So this section is significant because it uses the language of incantation. The poet invokes the images of his experiences to suggest the flowing of time. The physical existence of man is like a ferry plying between the two shores of mortality and immortality. He and his fancy, his imagination use objects to express the idea of search for the eternal beyond the transient. So, this search or the function of fancy exemplified by the fairy ride, which moves from one point to another in the physical world to a destination in the spiritual world. So, this journey of spirit can take place easily in a universe which is harmonious and well adjusted. So, you will see that the concluding section of the poem is the one which envelops the soul and without which the soul cannot be known. So, you will see that the final connection between human race is established in the final section. So, the poem Brooklyn Ferry is a great poem in which the poet successfully resolves the antithesis of one and many and establishes that unity in diversity is the eternal law of nature. So, what Walt Whitman is famous about, that is comradeship. He has lived up to that by describing the beauty of the country he's living in, attracting the people of his country towards that beauty, and making it more appealing for the generations to come. So, I hope you have understood the poem, and if there is any problem, we can discuss that in the live class. Thank you so much. Stay at home, stay safe, and keep studying. Bye bye.